Top of the team, Coach E, and this is Leverage Your Life. Now, if you didn't know, your life is your business. And if you're not living the life you desire and deserve, it's because you are not minding your business. And if you're not minding your business, it might be because you don't know what your business is. And if you don't, you're in the right place. Now, what we believe here at Leverage Your Life is that entrepreneurship is a vehicle for personal development. And on the flip side, personal development is the cornerstone entrepreneurship. So with that being said, in the words of Jim Rohn, work harder on yourself than you do anything else. And also in the words of Noble Drew Ali, study, 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 study. And when you studied everything, study yourself. So it's important that we develop ourselves on this entrepreneur path. Now I consider myself an entrepreneur. I do this every day. I'm a full-time entrepreneur running my own home improvement business. My wife runs her own business in health and wellness area. My daughter, she runs her own business as a nail tech. My son's getting into clothing design. And we're just a family of entrepreneurs. So we live this entrepreneur life. I'm raising my kids to practice entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship is everything. It's everything I believe in. I was introduced to entrepreneurship possibly 12 years ago formally, but I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I've always had the idea to be my own boss, go out and build something and grow and scale it. But officially, with the Cleanup Man, which is my main business, that's where I really ventured into entrepreneurship and gained all my experience from all my ups and downs, which brings me to a major topic because this is something I've experienced a whole lot of. And this is one of the biggest mind fucks that exists in today's time. And it's called fear of failure. The reason why this is one of the biggest mind fucks to me is because how could you fear the inevitable? It really doesn't make any sense to me to fear the inevitable. Fearing death, fearing, failure, it's inevitable. So why would you fear it? I think that we need to build an understanding of accepting it. But I know that we've been programmed to think of things in certain ways. And so we have certain concepts in our heads about failure, which completely messes you up when it comes to being an entrepreneur. But we're here to break those. Now, in order to deprogram or reprogram, we need to introduce new concepts to ourselves, but not just introduce new concepts. We have to believe in those concepts. In order to believe in those concepts, it must be backed up with some form of evidence so that our reasoning aspect of our mind can say, okay, that makes sense. I can accept that versus not being reasonable and therefore our brains rejecting it. So today I'm going to introduce some new concepts about failure that I want to get you to accept as I back them up with reasonable proof on why it is true. Now, it's up to you to believe or not. But in order for these new concepts to take root so that you can reprogram yourself for success, you have to believe. And that's all in your hands. Now, this is what I'm about to tell you, and I need you to get a pen and a paper because this is going to be some interactive situation. I'm not just going to sit here and lecture you. I need you to write some things down because part of this process is engaging every aspect of our senses. So we're going to see, we're going to hear, we're going to write, and we're even going to smell and feel eventually. But right now, I want you to get a pen, I want you to get a paper, and I only want you to write down the things I'm telling you to write down. Don't fill up this paper with anything else. If you need to put other notes on a separate paper. But on this piece of paper, I just want you to focus on the things I'm telling you to write down. Now, the first thing I want you to write down is failure is a prerequisite for success. Okay? Failure is a prerequisite for success. So let's rewind. I know I messed y'all up. Failure is a prerequisite for success. That's what I need you to write down. Okay? So let's start with that. Failure is a prerequisite for success. Michael Jordan. We all know the story about him getting cut in his sophomore year. But I don't know if people know that throughout his childhood, he would get the shit beat out of him by his brother in basketball. He wasn't the better player. He was getting his ass handed to him by his older brother, who is not known for playing basketball, ironically. But with all those losses and with being cut in his sophomore year, he still pushed forward to be the basketball player and end up being one of the greatest basketball players in the world. You know, the rest is history. Another character, Floyd Mayweather. He won bronze in the Olympics competing as a youth. Now, typically, most of the champion boxers that go on to be world champions, they win gold in the Olympics. So winning bronze, not silver, but bronze, basically having third place, to him was failure at the highest level. He might as well have lost. He might as well have gotten no medals. But he didn't give up, and he goes on to be, to me, unarguably, one of the greatest boxers of all time. Arguably to some people, unarguably to me. He's one of the greatest boxers of all time. Now, with that being said, I want you to think about something. Before we go on to the next part of this lesson, I want you to think about one thing that you ever did for the first time and succeeded in. Take a moment to think about anything you've done one time and succeeded. Now, after succeeding the first time, you repeatedly succeeded and succeeded without failure. Now, I want you to keep that ideal in the back of your mind because it's going to take you some time to figure something like this out. And when you figure that out, I want you to tell me. But 99.9% of the time, you're not going to figure that out because there is nothing in society, in existence, that can be done perfectly the first time and successively perfectly after again and again and again. It just doesn't exist. Nobody's good on the first time. And this is goes back to what I told you to write down the first time, which is failure is a prerequisite for success. Now I'm about to get into 3 things that failure does, and I want you to write each of these things down. I'm going to take them one at a time, and then I'm going to give you an example. The first thing I want you to write down is failure creates humility. Failing is a humiliating situation depending on how you fail. I've had some epic fails, and it's humiliating, especially when you had all these people hyped up about what you were going to do, and you don't do it. But that humiliation, that humility is necessary for a successful person to succeed in the future. Being humble is a noble character. So we put a negative connotation on humiliation, but humiliation is nothing but a form of being humbled. So you need to be humbled so that you can regroup, reorganize, re-strategize, and come back with a vengeance. Don't reject being humbled or humbling situations. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's like constructive criticism. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Second point, fear exposes weakness. If you have an issue with your vehicle that you cannot spot, you take it to a mechanic. The mechanic then puts it on a diagnostic machine. The diagnostic machine gives you some codes and some things that let you know what's wrong with the car in areas where you can't detect. The mechanic comes to you, tells you what's wrong, and what's your response? Oh, fuck it, throw the whole car away. I don't want it no more. No, you don't throw the whole car away because you got different things that's wrong with it. You fix the problem, and then you take your car home. Failure exposes the weaknesses in your program. Failure exposes the weaknesses in your system. If there's a leak, it needs to be filled. You don't throw the whole ship away. You don't jump off the ship because there's a leak in the ship. You fix the leak and then you keep sailing. So failure exposes weaknesses. You cannot become strong if you do not know where you're weak. And sometimes people can't see it or they just don't want to be honest enough to tell you. So it's a situation that comes and it's a failure that shows you where you're weak at. The last one is failure tests resolve. A lot of people think they want something until they go after it and face failure in it. When you face failure in something you want, there's a fork in the road moment that you have. That fork in the road moment is going to make you think about what you're doing. Do I really want to do this or don't I? See, when you succeed in something early, it gives you a false sense of hope and confidence. But when you fail at something, when you want it bad enough and it doesn't discourage you, that means that you really want it and your resolve has been tested and you've passed. But you can't test resolve with successes. You can only test a person's resolve with failures. If I keep knocking him down, will he get back up? At what point in being knocked down will he finally give up? Some people, you can knock them down and knock them down and knock them down, and they get back up every time because they refuse to lose. And eventually, persistence will overcome that resistance. So you wrote down those three do's. 3 things that failure does. Failure exposes your weaknesses. Failure um, shows you. No. Let's go back to the top. Let's go back. Let's start at the top one. So, failure creates humility through humiliation. Failure exposes weaknesses, and failure tests resolve. Now that you got those three, remember, you still got at the top. Failure is a prerequisite for success. The next one is going to be what failure isn't. And I only have one thing for what failure is. So far, you should have 4 sentences written on your paper. And now I'm about to give you a 5th sentence to write on your paper. This 5th sentence is what failure is not. Failure is not your cue to give up. Failure is not a sign for God that you need to quit. Failure is not a sign that you're not good. Let me give you an example. If Michael Jordan would have looked at being cut from his sophomore team as a sign for him to stop, he would have forfeited becoming one of the greatest basketball players of all time. If every time he got beat by his brother, or by the 5th time or the 6th time, he would have said to himself, look, if I can't beat him, how could I ever compete on a collegiate or professional level? Let me try another sport. He would have sacrificed becoming one of the greatest basketball players to ever live. Floyd Mayweather, if he would have looked at his bronze medal and said, look, bro, I was supposed to win gold. I didn't win gold. I'm not built for this. I'm gonna play basketball. I might get into real estate. I don't know, but boxing isn't for me. He would have forfeited becoming one of the greatest boxers in the world. So let me ask you a question. And I don't want you to write this down yet, but let me ask you, what greatness would you be forfeiting and or sacrificing if you gave up now? If you let the present failures that you've already experienced give you the cue to stop now, what future greatness are you forfeiting and or sacrificing? Now, you might say to yourself, these people can look back in retrospect and say, hey, I can see the greatness that I would have gave up if I quit. I haven't reached my greatness level. So how do I even know it's greatness on the other side if I don't quit? You don't. You're right. But there's one thing you can do, and I want you to do it right now. What I want you to do is I want you to stop for a moment. I want you to sit, and I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to ask yourself this one question. And in asking yourself this question, I want you to take note of the feeling or attempt to generate a feeling from it. Now, the question you're going to ask yourself is, how would I feel and what would I be doing if I had the success that I wanted right now? Now, if you don't know what you want, that's a whole nother problem. You need to go sit down and figure out what you want. But if you know exactly what you want, like exactly where you want to be, like me, I know exactly where I want to be in 5 years, and I know exactly where I want to be in 20 years. I know exactly where I want to be after that. I can sit down here and I can imagine myself on this day, probably in my office, at my home, in my estate, in the hills of Los Angeles, with views of the ocean and of the downtown area. I can see in my auto gallery all of my hypercar collections. I can look at my wrist and see my gold day date with the root beer face, Jubilee bracelet, fluted bezel. I can see my desk. I can see what I'm drinking. Most likely it's a tea. I can see what I'm wearing. I know what I smell like. If you can know, if you can picture and you can feel all of what you want to be when you reach where you want to be, then that's the greatness that you will be forfeiting. That image, that dream, that vision of everything you will have, that's what you're sacrificing. I don't have my hypercar collection yet, but I have it here. And if I quit now, I'll be sacrificing that. I don't have my TED Talk. I don't have my keynote speaker at a national conference. I don't have my best-selling book. But if I quit now, because my book is not selling. If I quit now because I haven't booked a speaking gig in a while, then I will be forfeiting that greatness 100%. So I want you to write down that question. What greatness would I be forfeiting and or sacrificing if I quit now? Now I want you to think about that, because that's very important. Because what you have here is just as real as what you're touching, feeling, and seeing here. It just haven't materialized on this level yet. But if you got a feeling when you thought about it, that frequency of that feeling, that vibration is exactly what you have or what you want. And as long as you can stay on that vibration, what you have will eventually come into your reality. But if you quit, you're forfeiting that. If you give up, if you lose sight, if you lose that feeling, then you also lose that reality. So on your paper, you have failure is a prerequisite for success. You have the 3 do's. Failure creates humility. Failure exposes weaknesses. Failure tests resolve. You have the one thing failure is not, the most important thing, and that failure is not a sign to quit. And then lastly, what greatness would I be sacrificing and or forfeiting if I quit now? These are the things you need to consider. So now that you have them written on the paper, the next thing I would like you to do, because you can't get it in one sitting. This is a process. You have to deprogram and reprogram. I'm just introducing a new concept to you, but now this concept has to take root, and it takes root with belief. And repetition is one of the most important aspects for beliefs, new beliefs to set in. So what I want you to do with this paper is I want you to transfer this specific information to an index card if possible, or if not, keep it on that paper. Then, if you want to, but I suggest you laminate it. Then I suggest you take it with you everywhere. And if not taking it with you everywhere for risk of damaging it, I want you to put it somewhere where it's visible, where you're at often, whether it's your desk at work or your desk at home or your computer. Take a flash screen of it with your phone and make it a screensaver. But more importantly, what I want you to do is the next time you reach a failure or a failing situation, and you will, guaranteed, I'm telling you, because you will, I want you to look at that paper and I want you to go through each of the different points we went through. But most importantly, I want you to ask yourself this main question: what greatness would you be forfeiting if you were to sacrifice and you were to allow this failure to make you quit? I know I didn't say it the same way I said it last time, but don't worry about it. It's the same concept. What greatness would you be sacrificing and or forfeiting if you quit now? Think about that. That's a very profound question, because if you quit, you have 100% chance of never seeing that greatness that we just imagined in our head. But if you keep going, there's a 50 to 70, but there's at least a 50% or better chance that you're going to accomplish that. And I like those odds, and you should too. So take that, write that down, make that a part of your life, make that a part of your everyday regimen. If you want change, you have to introduce new concepts. And if you want success, you have to change your concepts, not only of success, but of failure, because failure is a part of success. So that's all we have. Thank you for joining us at Leverage Your Life. And remember, don't be good, be good at it.